The last mistake. The room was silent, save for the faint hum of the machinery running in the background. Its soft whirring a reminder of the hours I'd spent here. The sterile, cold air made my skin prickle. But it wasn't the room or the equipment that unnerved me. No, it was the moment I had just survived. Finally, the last of the parasite eggs has been destroyed. The words echoed in my mind as I leaned against the cold metal counter, breathing heavily. My gloves were soaked, a mixture of sweat and some other fluid, something I couldn't quite place. The cleaning team would deal with the mess, but I knew the truth. The damage had been done. I had thought the hard part was over. I had been wrong. For hours I had hunted, eradicated, crushed the eggs with precision, each one dropping into the incinerator with a final satisfying hiss. The procedure was clean, calculated, and I followed every protocol to ensure the parasite couldn't spread. But when I had reached the final egg, the last one, my mind had slipped for a moment. In my wearied state, tired and drained from the hours of work, I had made a simple mistake. I crushed it with my bare hand. It hadn't been intentional. At first, it was nothing more than a desperate grab for any piece of equipment within reach. But the moment I closed my fingers around it, the pressure increased and the egg cracked. Soft, almost tender, and yet shockingly loud. A violent crack that echoed in my ears. I hadn't thought much of it. I thought it was over, that the parasite had been eradicated, that this would be nothing more than a minor oversight. Then the feeling started, a slight twitch in the back of my hand. It was subtle at first, barely noticeable, a slight shift in the skin, a sensation I couldn't quite place, something crawling beneath the surface. I shook it off, assuming it was just a trick of fatigue or nerves, but it didn't stop. By the time I reached the exit of the lab, I felt it again, a ripple under the skin, a subtle yet unmistakable movement that sent a bolt of fear racing through me. My heart skipped as I looked down at my hand, watching in horror as the skin began to bubble, tiny pockets of fluid beginning to form in irregular patterns. I gritted my teeth. It couldn't be. I had destroyed them all. The egg had been crushed. There was no way it could be. But then it came, the first spasm, the sudden jerk of my fingers as something inside me began to move. My breath caught in my throat as I stumbled back, the pain turning into a sickening feeling of something alive beneath my skin. A flash of recognition slammed into me. It wasn't an egg. It wasn't just a parasite. The moment I had crushed it, I had triggered something worse, something I wasn't prepared for. The creature inside the egg wasn't dormant. It wasn't dead. It was growing. I watched, unable to tear my eyes away, as small tendrils began to push through the skin of my hand, splitting it apart with a grotesque, wet sound. The skin stretched and pulled, revealing the translucent mass beneath. It was as though my body had become an unwilling host, an incubator for something far more insidious than I had anticipated. I screamed, but the sound caught in my throat, silenced by the horror of the situation. My head spun, my thoughts fragmented. How long had it been growing? How long had this thing been waiting? I backed up against the counter, desperate for something, anything to stop it, but the pain only intensified as more tendrils forced their way through. The once soft human flesh of my hand was now unrecognizable, a grotesque, bulging mess of alien growth. The worst part was the feeling of it moving. It wasn't just a creature, it was something that knew me, something that was connected to me. The movement spread to my wrist, and with it, a horrifying thought blossomed in my mind. I was not just the host, I was the beginning. I had started the cycle, I had allowed it to begin again. I had made the last mistake. It wasn't just a parasite, it was the parasite, the one that could reproduce, infect, and spread with a touch. The one that had been contained, that humanity had tried to eradicate for centuries, and now it was inside me, and soon it would be everywhere. I barely managed to turn, running to the emergency incinerator, praying to whatever forces were left in this world that I could destroy it. But as I reached the console and hit the override, I realized with crushing clarity that I was too late. The system wouldn't recognize my override. The parasite had already done its work. The moment I crushed that final egg, I had released more than just a creature. I had released a plague. And as the first spasm of the creature inside me took hold, I knew it wasn't just my hand that was infected. It was my entire body.